The mailman doesn't deliver on a Sunday.
If you don't like that, you don't like NBA basketball.
Anthony for three. Bang! J.R. Smith! We just saw men fly. LeBron James with no regard for human life.
Cleveland! This is for you!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Coast to Coast. I am Ronan Gaine. Joining me as always, Chris Nambu. Thank you all so much for joining us again. Thank you for making Coast to Coast your first listen for NBA coverage. Remember, you like what you're hearing, please like, subscribe, and follow wherever you get your podcasts. We're also free and available on YouTube. Just search Coast to Coast NBA Podcast. On today's episode, we are looking at a power rankings for the teams ahead of next year. We're looking at the top 10 teams going into next season. We'll also be taking a look at some of the young guys and even the young vets at this stage that could jump into the top 15 in terms of players. Then we'll finish off with a bit of fun, a nice tier list, and a bit more NBA Guess Who. But before we get into it, Chris, how you doing, man?
I'm great. I'm doing well. We got I think one more beach day in us here. It's gonna be 90 degrees today. So after we record here, you're gonna run off to the beach, then head off to work.
And even some more surprisingly, it's actually sunny in Ireland as well. It's very warm weather over here.
Is this your and can we share your personal news here? Is this your last sunny day in Ireland for a while?
Yeah, this would be my last recording in Ireland for a while, making the move over to New York. So we'll actually finally be recording in the same time zone and in the same country for once. Watching
NBA games not at 2 a.m. is probably going to be good. But
yeah, that's going to be
super
fun.
Exciting.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. So we're going to be recording Eastern time, normal time in the future. And this is farewell to Irish Ronan Gaine. Hello to New York Ronan Gaine. And I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, man, can't wait. But let's get into what we have to discuss then today. The important stuff. We're looking at a ranking, power rankings, the top 10 teams. We weren't going to go through all 30 because that could get a bit messy, but we're looking at the 10 best teams going into next season. So basically what they achieved last year and how they're looking going into this year. So let's just start things straight out. Chris, reveal your 10 through 8 teams there.
All right. Oh, we're going bottom to top. Okay. I'll say bottom to top is going to be a little bit harder. That's where we're going to I think we'll have a little conversation. I put Grizzlies 10, put Mavericks 9, and Kings at 8. What say you?
Ooh, that is very, very interesting. I'll just reveal mine then straight up. I got the Kings at 10, the Knicks at 9, and the Grizzlies at 8. I can tell you right now, I did not include the Mavericks on my list.
Interesting.
I look at them as a team that, if thinking we were doing this time last year, they 100% would have been there. But now, after what happened last year, now it's kind of like this is kind of the redemption year for Kyrie, like getting back to being fully committed to a team and actually delivering out there on the court what he's able to deliver. And for Luka in a way too, because he's kind of hit the low point of his career straight after hitting the highest point of his career. How's he going to bounce back? What can they do now moving forward? But yeah, they're an interesting one. I'm interested that you had them in there and I didn't. That's definitely a switch there.
Yeah, I mean, for the Mavs, I mean, they have potential to be lower. So I don't totally disagree with the fact that they could be outside of the top 10. That's fine. I think it goes without saying that more experience with Kyrie and Luka together offensively, I mean, that should blossom. I think there's so much potential there for what they could do together on the court. And I mean, Grant Williams himself is not enough to turn this team into a true contender, top 5. But I mean, they have some X factors. I mean, I expect that they have some rotation guys, not to even mention Jaden Hardy, what his growth could look like. Justin Holiday, a little bit more solid of a two-way player. Derek Jones Jr. even, I don't think anyone's really talked about him. I mean, he's not a guy who's going to win you championship or win you playoff games, but they needed guys like that. A Grant Williams, a Derek Jones Jr., guys who can play that position defensively. And I mean, what did they get out of rookies? Max Prosper, Derek Lively. Can they play some solid minutes? There's more options that they have, and I think that you give more options, more variability to this team, I think that will tend to go in the right direction when you have a guy like Luka. And this will be the third time that we see him look like an absolute animal in Europe. And then we're like, oh, he's gonna look so good in the NBA. So I'm not going to necessarily say that that's for sure gonna translate. But again, he looks good in the summer. He looks like he's in shape. He looks really great in FIBA. So I'm not gonna put
he
a
blew it for
Luka
his
led
boys
team.
there yesterday.
I know. It's poor timing to record and say that, but just in terms of physically,
Yeah.
I won't put him outside of the top 10 with that opportunity.
Yeah, that's fair. But what sort of gap do you think they have between being a playoff team and like having that magic with obviously Luka and Kyrie, and then what if they were to get a legit rim protector? Do you think that would put them up into the echelon of maybe like a team that are legit title contenders?
I mean, here's the thing, not necessarily, because I honestly think that that their game is going to be very different, and this always brings to mind whenever you talk about having a rim protector, and you're like, well, who's going to defend Luka? Who's going to defend AD? Well, no one's going to defend those guys, and you have to figure out ways around it. And I think that those guys I mentioned, Grant Williams, Derek Jones Jr., and having Maxi Kleber, Rashawn Holmes. Guys that can play small ball. Rashawn Holmes being more of a traditional five without maybe the rim protection, but I think that they can play good defense, switching on the perimeter, and that's what Jason Kidd wants to do with those guys. And now they have people to actually do that outside of having Reggie Bullock do it all day long, outside of having had I'm blanking on his name, who went over to the Nets. Help me out here, Ronan.
We're talking Finney Smith, huh?
Yeah, Finney Smith. Yeah. It's August. It's September. I can't even remember Dorian Finney Smith's name. But they have more guys there, and I think that you're not going to see Lively be a starting center the first half of the year. But it's not impossible. It's not impossible. We just saw one of the best rim protectors be a rookie last year. So maybe you get something out of Derek Lively this year. It won't be full time, but it's hopefully just enough. They just need to be a top 12 defense. Top 12.
Yeah, that's fair. And then we both had the Kings on our list, and then the Grizzlies too. What do we think about them? What we think of there? They'll be fine without Ja for those first 25.
Oh, we know that. Yeah. That's data driven. We've seen it time and time again. I will say a very difficult thing about them losing Ja right now is that, our track record for the Grizzlies doing well without him is when they had Tyus Jones, is when they had Dylan Brooks, and Dylan Brooks just ascends to another level when he's just given the ball all the time. And look at him playing for Team Canada, talking smack to Luka too. But losing those two guys will be tough. But I think that Grizzlies culture, that's what it comes down to. The culture of guys they have there, the next man mentality, getting Marcus Smart in there matters. Jaren Jackson Jr., I believe he's up for a career year. Having young guys who could step into those roles. I think that even though one could argue that losing those two guys is a big deal for a team that has been successful without Ja, that stems from the culture, that stems from their program. I don't think that necessarily was unique just to Tyus Jones, even though he's a great player, or Dylan Brooks, even though he's a fantastic defender. So
what you're trying to say is losing Dylan Brooks is going to be the biggest regret of the Memphis Grizzlies' life. That's basically
not for 20 million. Not for 20 million. No.
And it would be interesting to see what way they go, because obviously usually when they're without Ja, it's because of an injury, or just they're just slowing down a little bit or something like that. It'd be interesting to see where Bane looks at it coming into this year. He kind of comes in and thinks like, I'm the guy, the ball's going to be in my hands. Obviously Marcus Smart's going to be there too, so it'll be interesting to see what sort of impact he has as a leader at the start of the season, and will that help or kind of hinder him when he has to kind of take that more of a backseat role once Ja comes back in. It's going to be interesting to see how the Grizzlies try and work that situation.
Yeah, he's going to play sometimes maybe like a hybrid point, just being a catch and shoot guy for the most part. But I mean, you got D Rose there too to play a little bit more point. He hasn't played in essentially a year.
Yeah.
I don't know what that rest will look like for a veteran like him replacing Tyus. I know you still are a believer in Zaire, I think,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, there's still
I have a
something
little
there.
faith. I don't think that I would have expected him to pop last year if he's going to be a serious contributor to this team. But I mean, just being in the rotation. But I think I can't doubt Memphis. But who did you end up putting 10 again?
No, I had the Kings at 10, so we both had the Kings in there. I had the Knicks at 9. I had the Knicks
That's
in
who I
there
need to talk to you
at
about.
9.
What's happening for the Knicks to be better than the Grizzlies? What's happening for them to be better than the Kings? What's
No,
changing
I got
here?
the Grizzlies at 8. Don't you worry. I got the Grizzlies at 8. My Knicks there at 9. It's okay. But the Knicks, this is a big tester year. So we haven't seen this Tibbs, Knicks, Julius Randle led team do it in back-to-back seasons.
Hmm.
Now, admittedly, the first year they had that big jump where Julius Randle was most improved player. They got back to the playoffs. They're a better team now. They've added Jalen Brunson. They've added a guy like Josh Hart. The improvements we've seen from quickly, and you have to say from Randall as well. So there's big pressure on this team now to see just is the Tom Thibodeau formula for how hard he pushes his guys. Is that a sustainable way of playing? Can they do it in back-to-back years, sustain what they did last year, and possibly even improve on that? I think Brunson's primed to have another big year. If he matches what he did last year, like that'll be unbelievable, and that will become more of like the set level that you start to expect from him. IQ can have another big jump. RJ Barrett, we're not going to get into that. We know what we're going to get out of Josh Hart. Randall can continue to do similar things that he's doing, and a couple of the other young guys could step up and be a bit more important in terms of the overall rotation. So the pieces are there, the formula are there. It just comes down to, can they do this again? Can they do this high intensity level and do it for the second straight year? After a great year last year where they got to the second round of the playoffs, the Knicks actually won a playoff series. Unbelievable. Can they
Yeah,
go and do it again?
I'm. I want to believe in the Knicks, and I think I always stop with that part that you mentioned there. That the continuity going year on year, and I think the consistency, not from Brunson. I'm fine on Brunson, and I'm fine with the young guys too. I'm fine believing that they are going to have some growth, um, which is atypical for Tibbs-led teams. But I think just having an offense led by Julius Randle still gives me pause. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll reveal here that, some teams that I had to think about was the Cavs. And even though they beat the Cavs, I mean, just the talent level there and them figuring out after a year, I think I'll give a little bit more argument to them figuring out things a little bit more, getting more spacing on that team than the Knicks necessarily having the continuity. But that's interesting. I'm happy that you're putting them in the top 10 because I think this is the first offseason in a minute where those questions that you have there weren't posed as a negative and instead were positive. Like, this is a goal we can achieve. And I think that just goes to show that they had more consistency this year. And even though it's not like even though Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson, all that, like, that's not in my mind, the best formula for a traditional team to work offensively. I mean, they made it work. And Jalen Brunson is one of the best point guards in the league. So I'll take that. I won't argue too much on it. Did you have anyone like just right on the outside on the cusp where like there's a couple things that maybe you couldn't put them on this list, but you wanted to, or a team that you're thinking could surprise everybody and do that? Just hop right into that 10 spot.
I may be shocking you right here, but there's 3 teams that I have not on my list that a couple of months into the season could easily be in this top 10, even in the top 5. I didn't include the Clippers, the Warriors, or the 76ers on my list.
Yeah. Okay. I'm fine. 76ers, there's too much drama. That's totally, we don't need to get into that, but that's going to take more for them to be a top 10 team than to not be at this point, in my mind. Clippers, they don't deserve to be talked about here until I'm not going to put them in a top 10 list until I see them play 10 games together. Let's just say that. But But the Warriors, okay,
A
like
brave call.
we're getting a little ahead
Brave
of
call from
ourselves.
me. This
Yeah, so
this could,
I had
yeah, come.
well, I'll just say that I had 7-6-5 Heat Bucks Warriors. So what's keeping you with the Warriors, keeping them outside the top 10?
I just don't see that they've improved. I think they're going to be a bit of stagnation there with Clay, with
Mhm.
Draymond. I think Steph is still going to be great, but you have to think maybe he might just slow down just a little bit. Still going to be one of the top 5 players in the league, no doubt about that. He's still going to be able to lead this team, but unless they see Andrew Wiggins get back to the level that he was at on that title run in 2022, and a big jump from a guy like a Moody or a Kuminga, I just don't see them. I see them being a lot closer to the play-in tournament than they are to like the top 3 or top 4 seeds in the West.
That's right. And I think there's been some talk about, staleness, and I think that's, as a general theme, that's not incorrect. And even in some interviews, it kind of seems like that was kind of the vibe near the end of their last run. But number one with Curry, I'm not gonna say he's slowing down until I see it, because putting out 30 point per game seasons, still looking like an MVP, still moving like he has for the past 6-7 years. I won't predict it till I see it. Clay is another question, because his shooting last year was something that was a little eye-opening, and maybe tells me that he needs to take a step back and Moody needs to take a step up. Not to replace him, but to just, take a little responsibility off. And that's a change that I think, if Clay is still not at the level he was before, but he's still taking those same amount of shots, and he's still taking maybe poorer quality shots that he can't really make anymore, that's going to be a step back for this team, if they're not letting a young guy like Moody step in and take a little bit more role. I think Wiggins is fine. I'm not, playoff wise, what you're gonna get from him defensively and offensively. I'm not really thinking too much about it. The one thing for me why I had the Warriors fifth is Chris Paul. I mean, that no one's that it just hasn't been talked about a lot. It's been kind of like, oh, that's a weird fit. Warriors play fast, he plays slow, he's a point guard, he's not going to start type deal. But I can't possibly imagine a situation where two of the best shooters of all time, along with the best point guards of all time, don't find a way to make it work on the court together. And while they don't necessarily have a traditional role man at the 5, Ron Looney is not really that traditional pick and roll guy that Chris Paul is used to. I think Chris Paul, and what we've seen from him recently in Phoenix, how he's been a big part of the development of their bigs. I mean, what does that do for a guy like Jonathan Kuminga, who's honestly probably the best pick and roll guy? He's a lob threat. What does he do for a guy like Moses Moody when they're playing bench minutes together, a true facilitator out there? And you subtract Jordan Poole's minutes, a guy who can go off for points, and that really buries teams. And then we saw that when Jordan Poole would go off after Steph Curry sits, I mean that's just demoralizing. Mm-hmm. But instead, when you see a guy like Chris Paul come out and he's helping everybody do well, I mean, Moses Moody isn't out there just watching Jordan Poole dribble for 10 seconds. He's have Chris Paul's running a play for him. So I think Chris Paul could, for a lot of these players, help them and also add some new offense. If things are stale, I mean, Chris Paul adds an entirely different offensive look for them. And maybe that's something they can, try something new and have some, new flavor to this team.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Like, it's so crazy thing. I left them out completely, but I also can't say that I'd be surprised in any way if they weren't one of the best teams to start the year. It's just the way. It's just something that you kind of have to wait. Or for me, I'm just kind of waiting and seeing that they still have that level, that competitive fire within them, which you think they should. This is very much a win at all cost type of franchise. You mentioned you had the Heat 7, Bucks 6. I had the same, and then I had the Lakers as my number 5.
Okay.
So like the Heat, they could change, but at this point in time, they're a worse team than they were last year. They've lost Vincent, they've lost Strus.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle Lowry is likely to take another step back. They've yet to add Damian Lillard, so that needs to happen for them to really kind of get back on it. They're not going to do. I know this is the Miami Heat. They're always going to be in the playoffs. They're always going to do well in the playoffs. Yeah. They are not going to get back to that level. They are not going to win a title unless they add Damian Lillard. Like they need to make that move happen, whether that's early in the year or even before the trade deadline. At some point, they have to make that move happen. It's important for this team. It's the way they're set up is to make a big move like that come true to really deliver. I'm glad we're both on the same page with the Bucks here. Because go ahead.
I'll say for the Heat really quick. Vincent Strus, that's huge. I'll say I wouldn't be surprised for the Heat though if what I'm thinking about with Strus is that catch and shoot guy that you're losing, that's a massive loss. And he really replaced what Duncan Robinson had lost in himself somehow. And Duncan Robinson could just chill and replace that here and there. I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden Duncan Robinson is himself. That would just be a very Miami Heat thing. And I also wouldn't be surprised if out of this Heat program, Nikola Jovic all of a sudden is a really good rotation player. That those types of Heat things would not surprise me. And that would explain why they're still, in the top 10 here. And I think you're right. I'm not putting them higher than that without making another ad because of what you said about Lowry and Dame. But Bucks, I'm in maybe last year I would put them top 3, top 2. But I think we might have the same thing here. What's holding you back for them?
I think this team is just stagnated now. I think this team have reached their peak. 2021 was their peak. Yeah. Giannis is obviously still going to be a top 2 player in this league, no doubt about it. He is an elite superstar. But Chris Middleton, he peaked in 2021. Yeah. It's been downhill since then. He's not going to get back to that level. And then outside of that, they're still going to have a solid team, but they're not going to have a guy who's going to be able to score like Middleton was in that year. He's going to score efficiently from 3. He's going to be that 2 guy to deliver that shooting punch when Giannis is going coast to coast and getting those dunks and everything else. And unfortunately, I look at them, I just don't think they're going to get back to the level that they got to. I think they took advantage when they could in 2021. They won that chip, unbelievable achievement for them to do that. But I'm happy to call right here, Giannis Antetokounmpo will not win another title with the Milwaukee Bucks. That won't happen.
That's a fair bet. And it sounds like that's something that he's worried about right now too. What do you, those comments that he's made about, not re-signing until he's confident. That's a lot of concern for a team in a league that players keep making these demands, keep moving. I'm worried about that too. I'm worried about Middleton not looking like himself. But I don't think I'm not willing to say that it's over for Middleton because coming back from an injury in the middle of the season, we've seen it time and time again. That's not something that is easy to do. It's not something that, especially guys who are shot creators. There's so much balance that goes into that, so much core strength, so much muscle memory to regain for what he does. Not just a catch and shoot guy. He's a guy that's shooting from the mid post. He's a guy that's taking fadeaways. He's taking turnaround jumpers. He takes a lot of tough shots. So to get back to that level, maybe it takes a summer. So maybe this is not an issue because in October, game 1, game 2, or the second month, he's back. And then, okay, things look a little different. But for everything to hinge on Middleton's health, because they don't really have another guy. Mm-hmm. Drew Holiday has had some excellent stretches shooting, but that's not what he's there for. Grayson Allen's not going to evolve there. Jay Crowder is there. Who do you look to be that level of a shot creator? Because that's not Giannis's game, and he needs someone like Middleton alongside him. So that's what worries me the most is I agree with Middleton and relying on him staying healthy like that. I don't know. He's wanting them to make real moves, which is kind of funny to me because family's family, but you just push them to sign 2 non-NBA guys and his brother's Alex and Thanasis. I mean, those are two literally wasted roster spots when you could be trying to see who else is out there. Look at the minimum level guys that the Suns have, who I think we'll be discussing in a second here.
Oh yeah.
But there are guys out there that they could at least test the waters on, and two wasted roster spots. I mean, Giannis has to get real with himself, and that he did sacrifice a little bit there for his team to be making those comments.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think he's right to kind of make them public, though. He's not saying that I'm going to demand this trade. He's just going to say I need to wait and see. The problem is they've made all the moves that they can. It kind of feels like that sort of way, like the move they made to get your Holiday in originally, like re-signing Brook Lopez, re-signing Portis and Jay Crowder. Like they've done all they can at a kind of a minimal level to kind of support this superstar that they have to no choice but to support. But unfortunately, for me, it looks like Middleton is not going to get back to that level that he was at. And then that what kills the team, because they're not going to be able to trade him for a similar type of player. They don't have the assets to be able to bring in another guy who's at Middleton's level, and they don't have anyone on the current roster that is going to be able to take up that gap left by him. And that's where the issues arise. And that's maybe why you think that maybe it's probably almost like a 55 to 45 split, that maybe he's not going to be with this Bucks team maybe after next season or something like that. But it's definitely a worry for them. And I'd say Milwaukee as a fan base, maybe start to enjoy it while it lasts, or maybe just pray that Chris Middleton can get back to the level that he was at. Number 5, I had the Lakers. Let's talk about them. They've had a really great offseason without making any ginormous moves. It appears that they've built a roster that makes sense. They've just added Christian Wood in the last couple of days. And an interesting piece that I think to come into that Lakers team. It's like especially just to start off with him, he comes into that team, and if he's playing minutes where Anthony Davis is also on the floor, I don't think there's going to be too much discussion about his lack of a defense and lack of ability to protect the rim or anything like that, because that's going to be AD doing that. And when you think of him as like kind of like a switchable defender and a guy who can come out on the perimeter, he's not awful. He's capable of doing it. Obviously, there's many a guy that will see Christian Wood and be like, I'm going to take him, not a problem. But I'm not saying get him on your best guy or anything like that. But especially if he's in the second unit, he'll be fine, that team, and he'll add some nice scoring with a guy for his size to that Lakers team, I think. But he will probably need to play most of his minutes with a guy like when AD is probably on the floor as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's something that probably holds him back. I mean, I don't hate a backup front court of Jackson Hayes and Christian Wood. I mean, but both those guys on the floor, they're mobile bigs. They can switch, although I don't love them switching. I mean, I think that the major thing, like personally for me, for him defensively, is he comes into a defense that is established. And he doesn't have to be, for the Mavs, it's like, okay, Christian Wood needs to be the rim protector and needs to make sure that all the defensive mistakes on the perimeter get clean. But he's not going to clean the glass like that. He's not going to be, you're not going to funnel guys to Christian Wood and expect good things to happen. But I think he can be a part of a system there. And he's had moments of being a good weak side rim protector at times. And that's something he can do in spurts, but just not as a starting player. So Christian Wood, not the biggest signing that they have. I mean, they have such a big roster now. They have guys that they can try out. They can try new things throughout the whole season. I mean, they were the team. I think this is probably the most impressive thing about the Lakers last year is their resilience against change. The fact that they had the most, by far, different lineups throughout the season, but they were still right there knocking on the door for the finals. But now you got Gabe Vincent, much better three-point shooter than Schroeder. Taurean Prince, much better consistent shooter than Beasley. Wood, you're going to get more floor spacing from him. And then, I mean, you have two X factors too. I mean, what if Cam Reddish can play? What if Jackson Hayes can play? I mean, they're raw, but they haven't been in the right situations. And the right situation is playing with LeBron James. the right situation as being on a team with championship aspirations. And we already saw what we got from Vando, Reeves, and Rui last year. I mean, this team is if they're I wanted to put them 3, I did, but they're 4 for me. But they really with even with LeBron getting a little older, he's still a top 5 player. AD is still a top 10 player, and his health wasn't the worst last year. His health was fine. So, I mean, that they're going to be right back in there in the Western Conference Finals unless anything changes for me.
Yeah, I think the main difference, I think it's a big gap for them, is if AD's offense can get back up to the level that his defense was on, say, circa the 2020 playoffs, that's a game changer for this Lakers team because he was the best defender in the playoffs last year. Like 100% he was. And his offensive game, it was fine, but it wasn't at that level. Like, remember, like the last game against Denver, like LeBron had 38 points, but he was absolutely gassed trying to do that. Mm-hmm. He could still put that up, but he needs AD to be doing like 25, 26 points a game for that to actually matter. AD's got to be able to put up big numbers as well. And obviously, you're hoping Reeves has got paid. Now there's a bit of pressure on him to sustain what he did last year and even improve on it. Is D'Lo capable of being impactful as a starting guard in with a team that are actually looking to win a title? That remains to be seen. But like we say every year, it's time for AD. It's time for it to be his team. It's time for the major pressure to be on his shoulders, and he has to be able to deliver while knowing he still has a guy in LeBron James that's going to control the pace, going to control the floor, and still be really impactful at 38, 39 years old. I mean, we're thinking about a drop-off from him, and even a drop-off is still going to be, like 24, 8-5 or something like that. Like, that's going to be the drop-off we get from LeBron James. That's still pretty damn good for your second star.
Yeah, that's still... and you had me thinking about D'Lo for a sec, though. What are the chances that Gabe Vincent starts over him?
I think they're
not at the start of the season. You're very high. Yeah,
I think they're high. I mean, like, D'Lo has to show it. I mean, unfortunately, we see him more tank out when the light shines brightest, or when the moment is given to him, rather than step up and take it. So I think that the chances are definitely high that Vincent can get in ahead of him.
That if he accepts that role, I'm interested to see where that goes. But at the end of the day, Lakers are there because they actually have real depth. They have youth. They have options to try different things this season and preserve LeBron's health, preserve AD's health with that depth. He doesn't have to be there, I think, every single game. He can take some rest days. And that's probably the biggest part is, can you keep LeBron healthy 2 weeks before the playoffs? Can you keep AD healthy before the playoffs? And I think they have the depth to do that, and without fighting for a play-in spot this time. Should we step into our top 3?
Let's see your top 4. We got top 4 now. We know you mentioned you got Lakers in 4. Who's your top 3?
All right, we'll say 3 is the Phoenix Suns. Are we on the same page? 2 is Celtics. 1 is the Denver Nuggets.
Ooh, that's very interesting. Well, we've got similar Nuggets. Sort of vibes here. I have got the Cleveland Cavaliers in number 4. I got the Denver Nuggets in number 3, the Phoenix Suns in number 2, and the Boston Celtics at number 1.
Ronan, all right.
Cleveland Cavaliers. Look.
The Cavs at 4.
I'll talk you through here, right? The Cavaliers won 51 games last year. Obviously, they struggled in the playoffs, but they've made a couple of solid additions in the offseason. I expect to see more from Mobley, especially if they look to possibly trade off of Jared Allen. I don't think that's out of the question going throughout the season. See how it works again this year. You know what you're going to get out of Donovan Mitchell. You're going to see more growth from Darius Garland. I think they're going to be in a similar spot. Maybe not in terms of actually believing they can go and win a title, but in terms of the regular season, I think they 100% will be a top 3 seed in the East.
Okay, that's fair. Run me through that again. Cavs at 4, 3,
Cavs
2,
at
1.
4, Denver at 3, Phoenix at 2, Boston at 1. Nobody wants to accept the fact that the Denver Nuggets are a worse team than the one that won the title last year.
They lost Bruce Brown?
They've lost Bruce Brown. They lost Jeff Green as well, right? They are two players that played important roles in that title team. I'm not saying they're going to tank out and be a playing team this year, but yeah, they're still going to be a top 3 seed in the Western Conference. But it's always likely that they're going to see a drop off. And like last year, as great as they were, it always felt like things were just working out for them. It was just their time there. The times where you see Jokic throw up a shot with half a second left on the shot clock that should never go in a million years, and somehow goes in off the backboard, and things like that, where things were going for them. They went and played the Miami Heat, the 8th seed in the East, to win the championship.
Who beat the Celtics?
Yeah, who beat the Celtics?
Beat the Celtics?
I get that, but the difference if Jokic had gone and beaten Giannis in that finals, or
who lost to the Heat also,
or he had beaten the Celtics team who were still playing at the level that they were during the regular season. Don't get me wrong, I don't like getting too much into it because you can only beat the team that you play. Like, it's not your fault that the better team didn't get there, so you can't really put too much of that on them. But there's just that element, and it happens a lot with the European players. Let's not forget. No European player has ever led their team to multiple championships when he's the top dog. Dirk, 1 title. Giannis, 1 title. Now Jokic. They're kind of the main European players that have had the keys to their franchise. They've been the everything. They're going to take a bit of a slide off. Like Jamal Murray not playing for Team Canada because he needs to recover after the long season. Like, that's not a great thing to hear from a young player. Just after winning.
I don't mind that. I don't mind that. He just came off. This is his first healthy. He finally got back healthy. He had a championship run. He's focused on another championship run. That's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. But at the same time, it would make me worry just a little bit. Don't get me wrong. There's a good chance that my worries will be completely stupid when we're midway through the season and he's 100% looking like an all-star. That could easily happen, and this would be a genius decision from him then. But it's just hearing something like that from a young guy who, I mean, he's probably wishing he was playing with Team Canada right now, the way that team's going. But I just think that there's a lot of pressure on this Denver team. Can they sustain it? Can they get back to that level again? I'm not 100% sure, because it hasn't been done before by one of the European players, by one of these guys who's not a freakish athlete, who's been able to get that. I know you say that doesn't worry you, but let's just remember, like, there's like records and things like that are there to be broken. Can Jokic go and do it? I'm not going to doubt him too much on it, but I think we should expect a drop-off from this Denver team, and I think other teams have gotten better while they're probably sustaining.
The thing with the couple losses, then that's fair. That's something to discuss. Okay, so you lose you lose Bruce Brown. That's not nothing. I think you still get a lot from Christian Braun. I still think you get a lot out of a guy like Ish Smith. I mean, don't laugh at Ish Smith. I mean, a guy who does put in minutes, a guy who has been a valuable rotation guy. I mean, they're rotation pieces that will fill in for that. I mean, Hunter Tyson looks pretty solid. I mean, the guy that they just drafted. And I feel I'm at liberty to feel confident about rookies that Denver signs, because we just saw one of their rookies like produce seriously in the championship in Christian Braun. And I don't know, man. I really can't imagine the continuity of this team, Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray looking back to what he was like. I mean, Jamal Murray having just insane games in the playoffs, and it looks like he had his confidence back, everything back there. The defense we saw too from Michael Porter Jr. at times, it's clear that he's really starting to grow into that role. I'm not blinking an eye at losing Jeff Green and Bruce Brown. Jeff Green and Bruce Brown played great for a championship team led by Nikola Jokic, and they got their ring out of that. And Nuggets say thank you. Who else is going to fill that role? Because we're going for another championship. I'm not worried about it. And here's the thing too. Like you have to think hard about it, because I think the Nuggets have always been doubted, and I think that's an undertone to it. Is Jokic that serious level, athlete who's going to do it year after year, and he's European, so he has that stigma against him too. But the plays he was making, I mean, I think we didn't just see like the Nuggets win their first championship. We didn't just see these guys prove themselves to be champions. We saw Jokic prove to be like an all-time great. And those are the kind of plays he was making. He was making unbelievable plays because he's literally going to go down as one of the best players to ever play the game. And a team led by a guy like that, it doesn't matter he's from Compton, if he's from Canada, if he's from Europe, wherever, like that guy is going to continue to lead under that GM, under the kind of talent that they bring in year after year. That guy's going to lead them to championships every single year until someone gets hurt. If Murray's hurt, then sure, I mean that changes things. If MPJ gets hurt, then that's a big blow. Like there are definitely factors to it, but I really don't think that they're going to take a step back in the way that I have more doubts about Boston. I have more doubts about the Suns. I have, of course, I mean the Cavs aren't in that level, but you. We didn't even get to jump to the Cavs, but I'm here getting heated about the Nuggets, but I can't keep them outside of one. I can't put Boston there. Why are we more confident about Boston in this very moment than we are about the Nuggets? That's my question.
I think they're gonna have that bit between their teeth there, that determination after blowing it in the playoffs last year. They had a great regular season. I think this year I think Jason Tatum's gonna be a guy that we see take another jump in his career as a two-way player. I think he's going to be a guy that's really touted highly to be MVP of the league this year. I think the offense is going to be off the charts. I don't think their defense is going to take too much of a hit. And I think if health is on their side, then I don't see how they can't be the best team in the NBA
in the regular season.
In the regular season. And like if it's going well throughout the regular season, and maybe they'll do the same thing like they did last year. That's not crazy to think of. I just believe the growth within this team, and hopefully the growth of Joe Mazzulla as a coach, that'll take them through the playoffs again. Because let's not forget they're only a year removed from going on a run to the finals themselves. So I think they're going to be able to get back to that. I believe in this Celtics team. They have too much talent to not deliver, and even though they got to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, they did that playing quite poorly. That's
my concern. That's my concern.
They did that playing quite poorly. If they can get to a better level now this year, if they can sustain what they do in the regular season and then into the playoffs, then they are the best team of basketball.
I know, but the playing poorly thing, that's what sticks for me, because what was it that they lost that edge? They had that edge throughout the season. They had that edge, the ball movement, the defense, and the tenacity that they played with. And there was a different vibe about them in the playoffs that they couldn't consistently reach that level of play. And it's always been the intangibles with this group. And we talk about intangibles for a team that just lost their major leader on defense and in that locker room, and Marcus Smart. And losing a locker room leader, that's not the reason I'm going to put them outside of it. But I think there's a question of who's going to lead this team. That's a serious question to answer. Brad Stevens even mentioned it too. Like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, they need to step up as leaders. And that's not going to sink this ship. But when it comes to a team that has struggled to stay consistent because they're in their heads, because they're not finishing games, because they let off the gas pedal, they're being a little bit too passive, that you just lost a guy who's leading that. And then you add in an X factor of Porzingis. So that, like, how much do you rely on his success throughout the regular season if he's not going to be there in the playoffs due to health? These are not like major holes. These are questions, but I don't have these same questions with the Nuggets. I don't have questions about, where their leadership is going to come from, where everything's going to come from. Like questions about losing Bruce Brown and losing Jeff Green do not compare to me to losing Marcus Smart and a team that fell back into some old habits in the most crucial point of the season after having a really great regular season. Like that is way more concerning to me and raises more questions than.
Let's not forget they fell into those old habits with Marcus Smart. So let's not forget that part of it also.
I mean that's fair, but he was a big part of the equation, and maybe we're saying like addition by subtraction, maybe a little bit less Marcus Smart makes things a little bit cleaner offensively, perhaps. But I digress. Let's talk Suns though.
Yeah, well,
you had Suns over Denver.
I did.
And
on paper, this Suns team, they literally have to be the best team in the league. They've gone about as all in as they possibly can to build this team. they have to be, like, you can say they don't have to be in the regular season and they just have to be firing all guns blazing come the playoffs, but I think there's pressure on them to do it from start to finish, from the first day of the season till the last game of the NBA Finals. There's going to be pressure on this Phoenix Suns team.
Yeah, Denver's their only goal was to be better than Denver, and Denver destroyed them.
Mhm.
Right, destroyed them. I mean, even though we saw that 70-point combined game, I mean, how much better? I mean, we haven't. So we were waiting to see what a three-headed dragon would look like in Brooklyn with Harden, with Kyrie, and with Durant. Now we got Booker, Durant, and Beal. I mean, we had talked about before how I think Beal does fit in terms of an off-ball player, what he used to do there. He can be in a bit of a reduced role there. I don't see where defensively they've improved over the offseason to be there, because I don't think you're not beating Denver by outscoring them, and that was proven in the playoffs. But I want to say some nice things about the Suns, though. This isn't about you triggered me putting Denver out of the number one. Let's say some nice things. They signed a lot of solid minimum guys. I mean, like that's a major thing. Like, I wouldn't say that their depth is like solved, but there's a lot of potential answers there. Like, you go up and down that roster, the minimum guys they signed. I mean, hell, let's see what you get out of Bobo. I mean, he's not going to start. I mean, people need to stop saying he's going to start. He's not. But Eric Gordon, guy's veteran. He's going to come in there, and you know what you're going to get out of him. They just have guys like that are, I think, going to sustain regular season success. And you know that you're not going to get a full 70 games out of KD. You're not going to get a full 70 games out of Beal. But how do you feel about their depth right now? Is that something that's keeping them afloat to be number two for you?
Yeah, I think I love what they did with all the minimum deals. Like, with the little amount of money that they were working with and the guys that they were able to add. I think they did a really great job of constructing this roster, having gone all in for the second time when they made the move to get Bradley Beal in. I think it's going to be interesting to see the team, like, without Chris Paul, what way it works from there, because Chris Paul has such a positive impact on this Suns team. He's the one who got them to the level where they felt that they were in a position to make the big move for a guy like KD and go all in to win a championship. Like, Chris Paul brought them to that level. Now it's like, where do they go from here? Like, this is going to be the kind of season for Bradley Beal where we're like, almost like, oh, hey, remember me? I'm actually a damn good NBA player. So it's going to be, I think, like you said, I think it's all about being better than Denver. I think especially during the regular season, I think we're going to see this Suns team look like they could definitely look like one of the best regular seasons of all time. It's just going to come down to the playoffs, like you said, and do they have enough defensively to slow down the Nuggets? You're never going to stop a guy like Jokic, and if Murray's still at that level, you're not going to really stop him. Slow them down enough to be able to inflict their elite offense on the team enough to get over that line. Maybe that's a question mark. That's probably a fair question mark that you brought up. But in terms of regular season, I expect them to be the number one seed in the Western Conference, as long as KD is there for at least say even somewhere in the 55 to 65 range of games, and Beal something similar like that. Because Booker's going to be able to, he'll have no problem carrying them for a few games. If it's just him, I believe he's going to be capable of doing that.
Yeah.
And he's going to be kind of the linchpin there. He's going to be the guy that's kind of, you expect to be there for somewhere in like the 75 plus range of games. And he's going to be the one who's consistently there and hopefully stays healthy and hopefully just delivers again. Like that run he was on in the playoffs, he was looking absolutely unbelievable. He brings that into the regular season again. He's a guy that you're talking about as one of the top 5 in the league, and maybe the best shooting guard in the league as well.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how they play. We won't do a deep dive on the Suns right now, but I mean, just not having Chris Paul there and looking at this roster and not having any true point guards. I mean, how does Ayton suffer from that? Not having a guy to really create for him, or does Beal or Booker kind of step into a facilitator role? Booker, I think, is maybe a little bit more equipped for that. Because if you gave all these guys a number one choice, Beal, Booker, and Durant are going to prefer to pull up mid-range shots. They're going to really thrive in that area, and they all can't do that at the same time. And is Booker going to increase his volume from 3? Is Beal going to get back to that? He did not have a great year shooting from three last year. There's definitely questions about how they're going to set this up. But that's regardless of the talent. I mean, they have the most talent in their starting five for sure in the league, and that's going to put them there. And the depth is not terrible. We're not too worried about it. I mean, honestly, like you just name off guy Drew Eubanks. I'm pretty happy with that signing. I mean, that's a pretty solid backup pick to have. Yuta Watanabe, I'm actually super excited to see him in this lineup with what he's got. People need to chill on Bobo, but I mean, I think Bobo can play some minutes here and there. I'd love to see what you can get from him throughout the regular season, actually getting consistent. Josh Okogie, love that he's back. Terrence Ross. I mean, there's answers here, but at the end of the day, I think that they could slide. That's my thing. There's questions in the regular season to answer about how they play defensively, and answers how they play without a true point guard, without any real playmaking there. But they're still three for me. They're top three. They'll be there. I don't know about number one in the West. I think we'll have a surprise at number one in the West. I think the Kings, even though I'm putting Kings at the bottom of it, I think they'll still be a regular season winner. I think they'll still be top three seed. But Suns are there at the end of the season when it comes down to it.
Yeah, for sure. I think, in fairness, each of our top tens there, I think we're fairly similar, other than the Cavs and Knicks, and then you obviously had the Warriors in there. I think we're maybe not the same in terms of position, but similar enough in terms of the teams that we believe are in the top 10.
Yes,
anyway.
So Cavs essentially made this list instead of the Warriors, and the
Knicks
Knicks made it instead of the Mavs. That's interesting. The Cavs. Listen, I'm not too. You snuck that in there, and then we just kind of glossed over it. I mean, that's fair. We'll see what kind of contribution does Max Strus answer that big question that they have there. With the shooting, does Niang add that a little bit more too, for the shooting? I just need to see a little more from Mobley for me to jump into there, because we know we're going to get from everybody else. Mobley needs to really vault himself into an offensive threat, shooting the ball, even if it's from mid range. Like, he needs to have a little bit more face up game. You can't have two guys doing the same thing there.
Yeah, that 100% agree. I'm going to go on the other side of it and just believe that we are going to see that for him. But that definitely interesting. Speaking of Mobley, speaking of guys that are looking to become the next big thing in the NBA, the next big dogs of the NBA, in terms of players, who do we think are a couple of guys that are on the verge now this year of breaking into that echelon of top 10, top 15 player in the league?
So I'll start by just naming the candidates. I mean, I went through and really thought about guys who are on the edge of all NBA. So what we can say objectively is that top 15 according to all NBA is Giannis, Tatum, Embiid, Shea, Butler, Jaylen Brown, Jokic, Mitchell, Steph, Julius Randle, LeBron, Sabonis, Fox, and Lillard. And fun little thing there is, when's the last time the Kings had two all NBA players on the same roster at the same time? That's interesting. Never. Yeah. And starting off our list of candidates is recently former King Halliburton, Edwards, Mikal Bridges, Zion is going to be healthy, Markkanen, LaMelo Ball, Jaren Jackson Jr. These are guys that I'm thinking about, of like which of these guys could make I think that they have a lot of room for growth from fringe star player or star player to superstar player. Do you have any names besides that? Did I miss anybody?
Yeah, I got Jalen Brunson on my list. Trae Young. Jalen Brunson.
Okay. Trae. So okay, I had Trae Young there and Jalen Brunson. I think my two things with them were why I didn't consider them as candidates. I felt that there wasn't enough room for them to grow in the places that they needed to grow the most. Trae Young defensively, he's never going to get there, and I want him to get better to where the point he was 2 years ago. And I think that's a top 20 player. I think that's right outside of top 15. But possibly, I mean, I guess he can get back to it. Does that count if he gets back to it? I think he was in did he make an All NBA team?
He did, yeah.
He was an All-Star? Yeah, he did. So I mean, at one point in time, he was definitely top 15. So I mean, that's fair. Well, I'll end it there. And he could get back to his level, and he could definitely be a top 15
He
player.
buys in and starts to succeed with Quinn Snyder. I think you definitely start to think of him as a guy who's right there. Even if he's not like cemented there, he's definitely the kind of guy where when you get to like the likes of like a Julius Randle or like a Donovan Mitchell or something, they're the kind of guys that can be interchangeable as the season goes on. He at least gets to that sort of level.
What does Jalen Brunson need to do?
I think it's more of a sustaining it from him, because he's taken big jumps over the last 2 years. If he sustains the level that he delivered last year, and everyone is definitely convinced then that it really is him making that difference for the Knicks, and it's not all about Julius Randle, I think that's where you start to think of him as being one of the best point guards and even one of the best guards in the league. Like, stats wise, he was doing it last year. They were winning games. They do it again this year. He was 24-6 last year on 52, 42, 83 splits. He does something like that again. Like, he's 25-7 and he's doing like 50, 40, 80 again on the splits, and the Knicks are a winning team again. I don't see how you can't think of him as being in that echelon and in that sort of range.
Does he need to do more playmaking? Does he need to be more of a pure point to like jump into that?
I'd say there's an element of it
a little bit,
because it's like him and Randall are just kind of doing the same thing, and they're kind of taking turns of who's going to be the guy that scores the ball tonight. I think there is an element of that. I think if he adds that extra bit more, but I think his inside scoring and the scoring as a whole is the major part of his game, so you don't want him to lose that either. I think it's finding the balance and maybe just even finding a way to highlight it more without kind of resorting to not taking the shots that he takes, because he takes the very efficient shots and scores them well.
Yeah, you know what? I'm fine with that. I think he's definitely in this list. He's a little bit older on this list, I think.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. He's kind of like
that's the one thing where I was like, yeah. He's had a really interesting trajectory of being like solid role player, solid starter, really good starter. Then now he's a star in New York after he got traded, and that, I guess that changes things. That there's the stigma around, you know, how slowly he's gotten to this point. And I think maybe, you know, you see a guy, not to compare him to Jimmy Butler at all, but a guy like Jimmy Butler, where it took a minute for people to kind of recognize that, okay, this guy he's a top 10 player, top 12 player. But for the young guys, where do we kind of rank them? I mean, I think I'll start by saying that the people that I'm most confident in is Anthony Edwards. And the big question mark that we won't even get into is Zion. If Zion's healthy, I mean, I'll put him there.
Yeah,
I'll definitely put him there. But Anthony Edwards, I think we've discussed him enough. I think
we know he's the number one. Yeah, we don't have to discuss that. We know he's the guy that's right there, ready to make that leap and most likely to do it as well.
Yeah, and Halliburton too. I mean, just off of the playmaking, I think he's kind of a little bit below there. I think the interesting one for me, who's I guess maybe in a somewhat similar position as Jalen Brunson, being a new team, being a little bit older, and maybe being a little bit limited. Like I think that Edwards, for example, could do everything. I mean, I think he could become a superstar in so many different ways. Halliburton too, but Mikal Bridges, a guy who's like we were thinking maybe he could win Defensive Player of the Year type of deal. He's a guy that's averaged 26 points, made 38% of his threes on almost 7 attempts with the Nets. I mean, numbers like that while being a first-team defense, what does that do for you in terms of being a top 15 player? Is that Jimmy Butler-esque? Like you're a defensive stopper and you're an offensive weapon. You're a top offensively, you're like a top 20 player, but defensively you're a top 10 player. Does that by numbers, doesn't that put you right there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have to see if Bridges can be that guy for an entire season now, and like, can he have some sort of impact in winning? Because don't get me wrong, the Nets roster as a whole is just a mess, so it's going to be very difficult for him to have a real positive impact on winning. But that's kind of the thing that will hold them back. Like, they're likely going to be around the play-in sort of mark, and that might hinder him a little bit. But in terms of the level of defense that he can produce, like, you can be 100% confident in having him guarding the opposing team's best player. He can guard multiple positions, and then he can be that knockdown 3-point shooter, the guy who's delivering on the offensive end as well. It's a huge difference maker, because you always think so often that it's the offense that comes first, and then they're like, okay, so is this guy even capable of playing on the defensive end? Similar to like a Trae Young type of player, or even like a guy like Anthony Edwards, where you're seeing glimpses of it. It's like, now can he really bring this as a consistent part of his game? But Bridges has gone the other way, because he was in the situation he was in Phoenix. Defense and 3-point shooting was what was key for him to be a good role player in that team. But now he's been given the keys, almost saying, right, you go out and do your thing on both ends of the floor. And he's getting put in that position, and so far he's delivering on it. And the fact that the defense is always going to be there, now it's just a question of if he sustains that offensive level, sustains that impact, then you have to have him in the conversation 100%. Just the level of the team he's on might just hinder him that bit.
Yeah, the guy, it's fascinating to see the guy he's become just instantly once your mentality changes, not being behind Chris Paul, not being behind Booker, not being behind Ayton. I mean, he's really the fourth option there. And then you're wondering, like, oh, well, why isn't he putting the ball on the floor more? Why isn't he taking more shots? Why isn't he like because that's not by design. And then to see him flourish like this, I mean, it's really fascinating to think about what he would have been for the Suns and what the Suns would have done if he had the mentality there, been given a little bit more free reign. Because I think this is a great experimental period with the Nets, even though that it's going to hold them back. The Nets aren't going to be successful in terms of going far in the playoffs, but they have depth and they don't have a go-to guy. Mikal Bridges is that go-to guy. He gets to experiment and be like, all right, how far can he take this offensive thing? How efficient can he go if you're giving him 12, 13, 14, 15 shots a game? Like how good is his team going to be if he does that? And I think so far, the efficiency he's had, albeit only a quarter of the season. I mean, it's impressive. I have another interesting one. Lauri Markkanen.
Yes, he's got
Lauri
Markkanen.
Markkanen.
It's a big year for Lauri Markkanen.
That's a consistency thing too. You talk about Jalen Brunson going to a new team, proving that with more touches, that guy's a star. Markkanen doing the same thing in Utah. And this is a guy that just, he basically had a full season of what he would have for like 1 month every season with the Bulls. And he's on full display. He's a wing. He's a power forward. He's a center. You don't know what he is, but he can shoot. He can attack closeouts. You can play a little defense now. I mean, it's funny, the little experiment that he had with the Cavs really unlocked him in a very interesting way. He did it a little bit in Chicago, and it was just such a weird experiment. He wasn't ready for that as a young player, but now switching on to wings, using his length to contest shots and recover, and using his athleticism there, like he's really blossomed as an athlete. I think. I mean, he's in his physical prime, and with his size, of a 7'1" shooter, 7'1" wing, who's playing multiple positions. I mean, I don't see why he can't jump into that. But what's the major thing holding him back? I think it's defense. If he can take another step defensively, maybe, but
yeah, the defense is the thing that's going to be holding him back. And obviously the Utah Jazz aren't a team that's going to really be winning too many games this year. But in terms of him as a player and the size and versatility he has, and I think this year, if he can deliver on that again, he'll be looking over at Karl Anthony Towns and he'll be thinking to himself, "Ooh, maybe I'm the best big man shooter there is in the NBA." Like he can get to that sort of level. He's got the talent and the versatility he has on both ends. The defense just take that another little step. I don't think he's ever going to be an all defensive type of guy, but there's definitely another level that he can get to where it's something that you don't think of, and you just think of the offense and how much he's delivering on the offensive end because he's just doing fine and he's not a target as a defender. So I think he could get to that level, but even if he's at that level he was last year as a defender and he sustains what he did as an offensive threat, that changes it in a really big way for me. And I think he's a guy that just with the size that he has, everyone will be looking at him and thinking like this is a guy that can really be a difference maker for a number of teams, or the lead guy to lead this next generation of the Jazz.
Yeah, and I don't think he got enough. He got enough highlight last year. I mean, it was obviously the stats. It's obviously some of the dunks he had, some of the couple game winners he had. People realizing, okay, he's actually a good player. But you look at the tools he has when you watch him play, and there's not a lot of top 15 guys who has that toolbox. I mean, obviously the shooting, and then at his size, the ability to grab a rebound, go coast to coast, in the same way that you see from Giannis, from Tatum, from Randall. The ability to defend 3 through 5, even though maybe not at an elite level. I mean, just the versatility there to do it is a skill in and of itself. Not a lot of players on this list doing that. And just again, the size that he has too. What he can continue to grow with that, playing in the post a bit more. I don't know who's going to jump off of this list, but it'll come down to team success, and I'm interested to see as he grows. Same with Brunson, guys who have been given chance with another team, Mikal, Brunson, Markkanen. What about a younger guy? Oh, I want to test the waters with LaMelo Ball.
I'll just say quickly before I say that, I'm loving how you're saying all that stuff about marketing with that little smile. I like how happy it's making you.
I'm happy. I'm happy to see him do well there. I think it's unfortunate the choices the Bulls made to not necessarily to trade him, but the choices they made in terms of roster construction, because I think I was thinking back on some what ifs, and if healthy Zach LaVine and Lauri Markkanen are on the same team, that and Wendell Carter's still there. I mean, that these are guys who maybe they developed in other places because they're there. But you got to imagine there is a possibility that you set up the right development plan for them in the team that they're already on, and they figure that out like that. But that team would be fantastic. So unfortunate, but I'm happy he's happy there.
Okay, and then LaMelo Ball, another really interesting young player.
I'm gonna say no.
the big thing is obviously the team that he plays on, the Charlotte Hornets. I think they're going to be one of the worst teams in the East. Again, they're just such a nothing franchise. They like the Charlotte. You just think Charlotte, you just think of losing. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. He's in the position where he is being tasked with changing that, and he had some injuries last year, but in terms of playmaking, 3-point shooting, it's down. Now it's just a consistent scoring, commitment on the defensive end, and really trying to turn the needle, turn the screw just that little bit to get them up and closer to the play-in rather than being closer to being a lottery team. Because that's with the roster they currently have, that's the kind of almost the best you can hope for from them.
Yeah, I guess the team's success definitely wasn't back, and I wonder how. I mean, from a maturity standpoint, like where is he at? Is he leading this team? I don't think he's there yet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's there yet. And I'm making a lot of assumptions on that, and I mean that's just based on what we've seen. But I'm not super confident that jump's going to happen this year. Maybe next year. Well, we just have to see a full year of that happening.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but I think he's kind of the big question mark that you see, like after he won Rookie of the Year, after he did the things that we all expected from him coming out of Australia, and even surprised to see, like with his shooting, that was a big question mark about him. So it's going to be interesting to see, can he do that consistently? Can he be the guy that turns things around for the Charlotte Hornets? Because think of them as being the Bobcats, as the Hornets. All you think about is losing, and nobody ever even coming close to really turning them into a team that's in the playoffs year on year and having winning seasons year on year. But he's definitely kind of that outside one where he'll always be talked about in that realm, but whether he actually can achieve it, especially this year, I don't really see that see that being too likely.
And I'll say one positive thing about it. I mean, just to put it simply, like talent wise, I think he's a better player than Halliburton. I think he's I think on a similar level to Edwards, just in level of sheer talent, not physicality, but has a lot of similar tools to Halliburton, but I think has more potential as a defender and a little bit more versatility as an off-ball player, as a slasher. And I mean, a guy with that talent, I mean, he has potential to it, but yeah, the system there, unless things could drastically change, I mean, this could be a very different conversation a few months from now. But yeah, I'm not seeing it yet. But his name is there because of that reason, because that talent level is there, because he's so young, and because we're not privy to how things change in the offseason. We're not privy to their mentality. You know, that's things we learn later on. So maybe we learn a big thing changes. But I want to get on to the last name I have here. And I'd say he, along with McHale, I have them in like my top three. I'd say I'd go like Edwards, Halliburton, McHale, and then Jaren Jackson Jr. And the reason I say Jaren Jackson Jr. is because of the opportunity he's going to have. We talked about Desmond Bane having a little bit more with Ja being out, but Jaren Jackson Jr. hasn't fully had the reins, and I believe he will. And this could be a quick experiment of, you know, what can he do with the ball in his hands a bit more. But I think in terms of potential, like that has always been a tool that he has not fully taken advantage of. And he hasn't taken advantage of it because, you know, you have Dylan Brooks, you have Ja, Tyus Jones, you even have Desmond Bane. Like, you have all these guys who have the ball in their hands. So for him to attack mismatches on the perimeter, for him to face up and put the ball on the floor, I mean, he's got the ability to do it, and we've seen it in the playoffs last year too. Like there's been some times where, you know, he gets the ball and then he's in the triple threat position. He's making some moves. He's making drop steps. He's taking Euro steps. He's spinning into shots. And it's stuff that you don't see all the time in the regular season until he has a chance to do it. And he's a guy that, if he does that, well, what's the suspension again? I don't even remember. John Morant's out for 25 games. Yeah. I mean, that's enough opportunity, I think, especially with having a Team USA experience, having a little bit more of that. I'm interested to see if he takes that next jump, not just a best defender of the NBA jump, but also an offensive weapon.
Yeah. Obviously, like, we know he has the defense. He's the reigning defensive player of the year. Absolute machine, block, protecting the rim. But like, remember in his early days when obviously he was obviously injured a lot in kind of his early years, and they were looking at him as a guy who can space the floor and do a bit more like that. It's just it's a question of how much he wants it, how much of an opportunity he's going to get. You have to believe that there's going to be opportunities there for him. And where can he go from here? Where would be kind of the main areas? Would you want to see him more as a guy who can space the floor that bit more, or you just want to see the ball in his hands in the post a bit more?
Yeah, the spacing the floor is fine. He's continued to get better there, and I think he'll continue to improve. But my thing is going from just a catch and shoot on the perimeter to a catch, maybe if he's posting up a smaller guy. A lot of teams are going to want to put smaller guys on Jaren Jackson. Mm-hmm. Post them up. He's shown that he's developed as a post player, but also his face-up game, because he can put the ball on the floor. He can get to a spin move. He can get to a drop step. He can get to a Euro. I mean, I think that's where he can flourish, because he does have some skill with the ball. Not enough, obviously, to be initiating on the perimeter, but I think enough to have to be a go-to option in the mid post, to be a go-to option if he's facing up there. And I think that's what, I mean, I think that would vault him into being a defensive player of the year guy who is scoring 24, 25 a game, if at his peak. But we just need to see it a little bit more. And I think he has potential for that.
Yeah, and I think that like a move like that is something that changes the kind of realm for the Grizzlies as well. And it's not so hyped on Ja
Exactly.
and Desmond Bain, when you don't think of Jaren Jackson Jr. just as being that defensive stopper, then you're kind of like, how can a team really stop this team if Ja and Bain are at 100%, and you got Jaren Jackson Jr. as this unbelievable defender, but also this serious offensive weapon? That's like that's a team that can challenge the Denver Nuggets for sure if it can get to that level.
Yeah,
Let's
that gets me excited. Sorry, I need to
yeah,
indulge in
gotta
that
go
thought
on those Grizzlies,
because that is, you always look at across the league, like where's the growth going to come from, and it's obvious to look at the Suns and look at the stuff that they got, look at their shiny new toys. But a guy like Jaren Jackson, when you can grow a player like that, if he goes, like you said, from not just being a defensive stopper but becoming an offensive weapon, like a serious offensive weapon like that, the Grizzlies, then they that's something they need to invest in, because that's their future. That's their future, is Ja being a superstar and Jaren Jackson Jr. being a two-way star, like an emphasis on two-way. So that, I mean, that gets me excited, man. It's possible. I think it's in the cards. It's there.
Just to finish out, then make a call. Then okay, we'll say maybe we both feel it's Anthony Edwards, but out of this list of players, who do you think is most likely to make All NBA next season?
So officially, you got to call it. I'm gonna I'm gonna end it there. I think. Who do I believe in to make the jump we talked about the most? I think I want to say it's. I really want to say it's Mikal Bridges. I think that offense is going to stay there. And that, I think that the Nets will be in the play-in probably with that contribution, with their depth. I'm picking Mikal.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm actually tempted to go for Jaren Jackson Jr.
I know.
Well, I
Almost
think I'll say I think I'll go Halliburton. I think I'm gonna I believe we're gonna see a growth from the Indiana Pacers, and he's a guy that can definitely average like 23 points and 10 assists a game while shooting 40% from three. So I think he's a guy for me that could will definitely be in the conversation around All NBA next year. But let's get on to the fun stuff. We got a bit of NBA Guess Who coming up, but before that, we're going into a tier list.
You do the tiers next time. Running late here, man.
We're running late.
We're taking everyone's time here. I think we got time for the game. We're gonna have to hold that.
Okay, we'll hold off the tier list, but it's actually a good one, so we'll hold off on that. But we will come back to you next week with a great tier list. So we'll finish off then with our new game, a bit of NBA Guess Who. Chris, you wanna go first for me?
All right, I'm taking the win back this time. I promise you. We only got two Guess Who's, and I'm starting off with last year, a guard to average 30 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, 1 block on 50% shooting. He was the only other player besides MJ to do it ever. Who am I?
I am Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Okay, see, I gave you a layup there.
You gave me such a layup right there, brother. You did me a solid there. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. That was a really nice way to start things off.
You remembered it. Okay. But my other facts, he was traded after his rookie season for an All-Star, born in Canada, as we know. Cousin currently plays for the Jazz. All right. That was I should have
you shouldn't have started with that clue. You shouldn't have started with that clue. That should have at least been the second clue, I think. But I got one for you now. This could be really easy, or it could stump you a little bit. But
you owe me an easy one after last time.
I do owe you that. But let's see what way your knowledge is at here. I averaged career high in points and assists last year. 24.2 points, 5.8 assists, while also averaging the most minutes per game in the NBA.
Oh, most minutes per game in the NBA. What were stats? 24 points and
5.8 assists.
5.8. Okay, so that's not Jalen Brunson because he averaged 6.4. Don't ask me why I know that. Most minutes in the league with that many assists, that many points. Who is most minutes in the league? Most minutes in the league. Was it De'Aaron Fox?
It was not De'Aaron Fox. Second clue,
Okay.
This might make it a bit easier. I was named the NBA's most improved player in 2019.
Oh, in 2019. All right, let's think. Last year, wait, 2019, 2020, or 2018,
No,
2019?
2018,
2019,
2019.
2018, 2019.
Yeah.
Most improved player in 2018, 2019. Oh, that's tough, man. Okay. So let's work back the clock. That would have been 2018, 2019. That's pre-COVID is like years, ancient history. Ancient history. So the year before COVID,
Think of a
the
guy
season
who
before
was
COVID.
growing as a role player on a team at that time and who is now the lead guy of that team.
Okay, that's a friendly clue. I appreciate that. I'm gonna say, but Fred VanVleet did not have a career year. I'm gonna say Pascal Siakam.
And you are correct.
Oh, okay.
Nice, man. I'm happy. I'm
That was
glad
tough.
you got there. I'm glad you
That
got
was
there.
tough. Okay. The assist part got that did get me.
Yeah, you always just think of the guard. Anything over like 5 or 6, like, oh, I gotta be a guard, yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
that's Siakam though, yeah. Most minutes in the league. Him and who he was tied with? Kyrie.
Really?
Yeah, 37.4 minutes per game.
That's insane. That's insane. I was, as soon as you said minutes per game, I was like, oh, it's a Nick. All right. You have to get this one.
No.
I believe in you. This player had the lowest shooting percentage of any three-point shooting contestant last All-Star game.
Julius Randle.
Jesus Christ. All right.
Oh man, you
give me an
set me
extra
up.
credit or something. I
You
got
set
no
me you
chance.
set me up for that when you mentioned it at the start of the pod. You set me up for that when I had to get tested on my Knicks knowledge. I only have one more for you, but I know you had a third for me, so I'll let you ask that third person anyway. I'll move on to my second and final guy for you. This is going to be a bit tougher, but this is if you think about a team that you like and a type of player that you like, you might be able to get it. So,
Derrick Rose, not good.
I am a 10-year veteran of the NBA, a 2-time champion, and I won the rings with 2 different teams.
Oh, okay. Drafted in 2013, won 2 championships with 2 different teams. So he was either on the Warriors or he was on. Oh, wait. Jay. Oh, wait, no. When did Oh man, this is so obvious too. This is the worst part. This is the worst part is as soon as you hear it, you're like, I knew that. Give me one more.
I was a top 10 pick in 2013, the number 8 overall pick.
Oh, the number 8 overall pick. Oh my God. This is a good one. 2013. Who was drafted 8th in 2013? All right, in 2013, I was graduating high school. Who was the number 1 pick in 2013? Graduating high school, I want to say that was like, was that the Jabari Parker draft? No, that was 20. Dude, this is gonna kill me. Give me another one. Oh my God.
Okay.
I'm ready to be so depressed about this.
Never been named to an All-Star, All-NBA, or All-Defensive team, but no doubt remembered as a crucial member of both championship teams. Think of the last 5 years, the best role players on championship teams.
Okay, let's see. Oh. Oh. Okay. Was it either the Cavs? It was either the Warriors? It was either the Raptors? And you did it on 2 different teams. Oh no, it's not.
I think in 5 years, so the Cavs aren't involved there.
Oh. Is it Ronan?
Okay, he won it.
What's
He
the
won.
last?
He won the title last year. You have 10 seconds to guess.
Dude, I would be so bad on a game show. I think the pressure just stresses me out. I can't think.
5,
It's
4, 3, 2.
Oh my God. Okay,
You
who is
didn't
it?
get there. It was Kentavious Caldwell Pope.
Oh my. Yeah. Yeah. I should have got there. So it was the Jabari Parker. Was that the Jabari Parker?
No, Jabari Parker was 2014, wasn't he?
2014?
He was number 2 in 2014, Jabari Parker, wasn't he? So I think he was
Yeah.
2013.
Oh, yeah. Lakers and then oh my God, Lakers and
Nuggets,
Nuggets.
baby.
Dude, that was bad. That was a really good one though. That was a really good one. It's hard to think of it on the spot. It's like because then you're like, I need to know this because that was such a good clue too.
Without
All right,
your
you got
clues,
me.
of course. Your clues just make it nice and easy for me. You got to give me this last one.
All right.
This is at least a challenge.
All right. If you don't get this, you are a national disgrace. This is your last question to celebrate our final pod with you being in Ireland. Who is the only Irish-born player to ever play in the NBA? It's your only clue.
Oh man, I do not know his name. This is the guy who played against Michael Jordan, right?
He played for the Magic in 2002, 62 games. He's a 7-foot center.
No, I have no idea what his name is. His name like Doherty or something like that. I have no idea.
Wait,
what his name
I'll
is.
give you here. How about this? It's a pretty classic Irish name. Give me his first name. We'll give you 3 guesses.
What is his first name? I don't know.
What's the most classic Irish name?
What is it? A classic Irish name? We got like James. No, James doesn't know that. Thinking Stephen. No, I'm not gonna get it. I'm not gonna
Patrick.
get it. Patrick, of
Burke.
course, Patrick. What was his last name?
Patrick Burke. Played 62 games for the Magic. All right.
God. Oh well.
So I lost the game. You're a national
Irish
disgrace.
I am a national disgrace, but I won the game, so that's the most important thing to remember when we do these sort of things. But
I'm sorry, KCP. I apologize. I should have known. You
should have known KCP, but I ruled supreme. First guess on both of them. I was balling out there today.
Yeah.
I was feeling good, but that's gonna do it for today's pod. We'll have to get to the tier list on the next episode, but it's gonna be a fun one, so make sure you tune into that. Fun to talk power rankings, fun to actually look ahead until the next season while we're still, of course, in the doldrums of the off season. But always good to talk ball with you. Thanks so much, Chris, for joining me, and thank you all so much for listening. Remember, you like what you're hearing, like and subscribe. You do that, and we'll keep producing that content. And most importantly, remember to take every shot and love every moment.
Peace out.